Battle Through the Heavens, Chapter 123. A Deadly Vow of Revenge, Beneath the Great Waterfall. As the wolf-head mercenaries sow the seeds of betrayal with their calculated lies, a storm of greed begins to close in on Xiaoyan and his companion. Seeking the power necessary to survive this treacherous pursuit, the young warrior retreats into the solitude of the mountain depths. Beneath the crushing weight of a massive waterfall, he now pits his resolve against the relentless forces of nature.
The roar of the waterfall filled the canyon day after day, a constant thunder that had echoed for years. Heavy mist hung in the air, sealing this place away from the world and its blistering heat. Below the silver torrent, a boy stood bare-chested. Xiaoyan ground his teeth together. He gripped the massive black sword, his heavy Xuan ruler, and swung it with everything he had. Each strike against the falling water sent white spray exploding into the sky. His feet were locked onto the wooden posts like the roots of an old tree. Faint gold dou qi flickered around his skin. Every time the freezing spray hit his body, thin trails of steam rose from his flesh. Swinging a heavy blade into a crashing current drained his strength in seconds. He had been holding his position on the posts for a long time. Now, his arms throbbed with a dull, numbing ache.
Xiaoyan forced himself to endure. His heels began to shake. On his next strike, the weight of the water finally broke him. The current slammed into his chest and threw his exhausted body off the post and into the lake.
He broke the surface and spat out a mouthful of water. He shook his head to clear his vision, then dragged his numb limbs toward the bank. He crawled onto the cold stone and collapsed. Every muscle in his body felt like it had been beaten with a hammer. He did not want to move ever again.
Try this.
The scent of roasted fish drifted under his nose. Yao Lao stood over him, waving the food back and forth. Xiaoyan opened his eyes and inhaled. His stomach let out a sharp growl. He pushed himself up against a large boulder and took the fish, tearing into the meat like a starving animal. Yao Lao watched him and smiled. He looked toward the wooden posts standing in the spray.
Not bad,
he said.
It has only been 5 days, and you can already hold the third post for this long?
Xiaoyan grunted, his mouth too full to speak clearly.
The mercenaries are getting closer,
Yao Lao said, his voice casual.
I have seen more of them in these woods lately.
Xiaoyan stiffened. He swallowed the food and narrowed his eyes. A cold look crossed his face.
The Wolfhead Mercenary Company must have realized something.
At their current pace, they will find this valley within a month.
Yao Lao said.
We need to move faster.
Faster?
Xiaoyan stared at him. He was already pushing himself to the limit.
We can increase the speed, but the method is painful.
I have already lived through plenty of pain,
Xiaoyan said. He wiped his mouth and shrugged. Yao Lao nodded. He reached into Xiaoyan's storage ring and pulled out a dozen crystal vials. They were filled with a thick red liquid that looked like fresh blood.
What is that?
Xiaoyan asked.
Burning blood,
Yao Lao said. He swirled the liquid in one of the vials.
I made this using 23 different fire attribute herbs and the blood of 3 rank 2 magical beasts. It is the equivalent of a tier 4 medicinal pill.
A tier 4?
Xiaoyan frowned. He had never seen something that powerful before.
What does it do?
It is perfect for those who use fire attribute Dou Qi, but it is poison to anyone else. When you rub this on your skin, it forces your internal energy to burn away and regenerate at the same time. That constant cycle of destruction and rebirth will make you stronger.
Yao Lao gave him a sly look.
But do not celebrate yet. I told you, this is going to hurt.
How bad?
Zhao Yan asked. He shifted uncomfortably.
Give me your arm.
Yao Lao grabbed Xiao Yan's wrist and tilted the vial. A single red drop fell onto his skin. Xiao Yan gasped. He sucked in a sharp breath as his forehead broke out in a cold sweat. He clamped his jaws shut, but his arm began to shake uncontrollably. It felt like a branding iron had been pressed into his flesh. A wave of heat radiated from the spot, as if his arm were being held over a bed of white-hot coals. Yao Lao ignored the reaction. He pulled out a flat piece of white jade and used it to spread the drop across Xiao Yan's skin. As the liquid covered more area, the shaking intensified. The veins in Xiao Yan's arm bulged and throbbed. His skin turned a deep, angry red. The burning lasted for 10 minutes before it finally started to fade.
Zhao Yan let out a long, ragged breath. He wiped the sweat from his eyes and looked at the vial with genuine fear.
That is terrifying.
He said. He rubbed his arm, waiting for the temperature to return to normal.
You want me to use that to train?
Focus on your Dou Qi!
Yao Lao said.
Tell me what you feel in your arm.
Xiao Yan closed his eyes. He sent his mind into his meridians. He was stunned to find that the Dou Qi in his arm was far more concentrated than in the rest of his body. The energy felt denser, sharper. He opened his eyes and looked at Yao Lao. He went silent for a moment, then set his jaw.
Let's do it.
Yao Lao's smile widened. He knew Xiao Yan couldn't resist the promise of fast growth.
Lie down!
We will cover your whole body once a day. Your cultivation speed will increase by nearly half.
Xiao Yan stuffed a piece of cloth into his mouth to keep from biting his tongue. He gripped the edges of the boulder until his knuckles turned white.
Do it!
He muffled. Yao Lao tilted the vial, and the red liquid began to flow. A muffled scream tore through the valley and echoed against the cliffs. While Xiao Yan spent every waking hour in agony, the Wolfhead Mercenary Company drew closer. They lost 12 men to the dangers of the forest, but they didn't stop. 1 month later, Xiao Yan was standing firm on the 8th wooden post. A mercenary finally broke through the brush and stumbled into the quiet valley. The man froze at the entrance, staring at the boy training under the massive waterfall. He shook off his shock, and a look of manic joy filled his face. He reached for a signal flare, but before he could trigger it, a sharp gust of wind whistled toward his head. The mercenary was a 6-star doge. He sensed the danger and leaped backward. A massive black shape cut through the air and slammed into the ground. Mud exploded in every direction. The heavy Xuan ruler buried itself deep in the dirt, right where the man had been standing. The mercenary stared at the strange weapon. He knew that sword. It was the mark of the boy with the bounty on his head. The man didn't hesitate. He turned and bolted toward the forest, his eyes darting around as he looked for an escape. He was nearly at the exit when his instinct screamed. He dropped to the ground without thinking. A heavy blast of air hissed over his head and smashed into a massive tree. The trunk splintered with a deafening crack, and the entire tree topped over. The mercenary shivered. The sheer power required to snap a tree like that was monstrous. He slapped his palms against the dirt and moved like a lizard, using a high-level movement technique to scurry into the dense undergrowth. He was fast. He was a specialist at escaping through the woods. He could already see the gold he would get for the information. He could imagine the women he would buy with the reward. Then, a pair of feet appeared in his path. The mercenary skidded to a halt. He looked up, terrified. A young, handsome face was smiling down at him.
You run fast,
the boy said. Xiaoyan's eyes were like chips of ice. The mercenary felt a chill run down his spine. Xiaoyan's hand moved. The black ruler swung in a blurred arc. A single, bloody scream filled the woods. Xiaoyan looked down at the blood on his blade. He flicked the sword clean and stared at the corpse.
You want me dead that badly? Fine.
He looked toward the horizon, where the rest of them were hiding.
From this day on, every wolf-head mercenary who sets foot in these mountains dies. You want to be cruel? I will be worse. Revenge starts now.